All right, here we go. We have Nuri Muhammad, the student minister of the Nation of Islam. Welcome to Vlad TV.
Thank you, Vlad. It's an honor to share space and time with you this afternoon.
Absolutely. Likewise. Likewise. Okay, so this is actually your first time here, so I want to get into your whole story. Uh, and first of all, when I was doing research on you, you were born in 1974.
Right, that's right.
You were 44 years old, which kind of blew my mind because I thought you were maybe in your late 20s, early 30s.
Well, that's I count that as a blessing. You know, trying to follow the dietary program that God revealed to the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. We call it How to Eat to Live, and trying to think right, eat right, and do right. Mix all that up together is supposed to keep us young for a long time. Somebody asked me on the air the other day, said, "What, brother? You that I thought you was 25. What's your goal?" I said, "My goal is to die young at an old age."
There you go. Well, clearly, whatever you're doing is working, so congratulations.
Thanks, sir. Praise be to Allah.
So, you grew up in Indianapolis, Indiana.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, this was in the late 70s, early 80s. What was that area like when you were growing up?
Well, of course, you know, Indianapolis is the birthplace of the Ku Klux Klan. So there is in the city of Indianapolis 1.1 million Caucasian versus 200,000 black people. And with that type of birth of the Ku Klux Klan being there, it has always been a stronghold for racism and real close to the buckle of the Bible Belt. So when you mix the social and the political and economic racism multiplied by the spiritual and religious racism that comes from the misinterpretation of scripture, Indianapolis becomes a very unique, special, and challenging place for someone that is a young black boy growing up under those circumstances.
You yourself, did you experience racism in school or, growing up in that area?
Of course, you know, it's almost a universal pattern. I remember looking at an interview with Jay-Z, and then another one with Steve Harvey, and then a story about Pharrell, and then I remember the story that I learned about the minister, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, Malcolm X. It seems like everybody that is a young black male, somewhere between that sixth and eighth grade, they meet a spirit killing sixth grade, seventh grade, eighth grade teacher that sees potential in you and tries to do something to be a dream snatcher or aspiration assassin or a spirit killer to keep you from becoming that. So I too experienced the same thing. When I was in the sixth grade, my teacher told my best friend that, look, you need to get away from him. I've seen his type before. He's going to be a nobody in life and he's going nowhere. And of course, you know, this is my ace. This is my main man. We live next door to each other. Whenever his electricity's off, he gets an extension cord from my house. When mine, you know, we share cereal. I mean, we share clothes. He wears it with blue jeans on Thursday. I wear it with black jeans on Friday. Nobody. So this is my man. So what did you think he did? He came and told me. So after that, I went back to school, and I got to school, and I asked my teacher. Told him I need to speak with you in the hallway. Of course, that's odd because normally they take you in the hallway. And I asked him. I said, "Is it true that you said I was going to be a nobody in life and going nowhere?" And he said, "Well, wait a minute." I said, "Did you say it or did you not say it?" And he admitted it. And I told him, you know, edited version, you know, well, don't say nothing to me for the rest of this year. I'll finish your class. How can I believe in you as my teacher when you don't even believe in me as a student? And you won't believe this, Vlad, but a few years ago, I was speaking at Butler University, and you won't believe who was there.
Same teacher.
The no good, spirit killing sixth grade teacher. And he had the audacity to walk up to me and shake my hand and say, "You know what? I always knew you was going to be something." And in my mind, I'm thinking, no, you didn't. But in my mind, I realized maybe he did. And he was trying to keep me from actually becoming that. So it seems like that we didn't escape that same universal pattern of the racist mind in the system of education that made sure that they stuck a needle in our brain and injected into the consciousness of the black psyche a poisonous enzyme of doubt and fear and low self-worth and poor self-esteem to keep us from becoming that. So yes, in the short answer, I experienced it in every term.
Well, the way you described this time of your life, having, a kid next door, sharing electricity, sharing clothes, I would have to assume you guys grew up relatively poor.
This is true. This is true.
Okay.
We knew how to turn our water back on when they came and turned it off.
Were both your parents around, or you raised by one parent?
I was raised by one parent inside my household. I had a stepfather that came into my life early in life, and he did the job of being a father while he was present and a distant mentor, example, and father in absence. But for the most part, like the universal story of a lot of us, that I had a single black woman trying to be comforter, consoler, nurturer, sustainer, and at the same time take on the man's role of maintaining, protecting, and providing. So it was like that when I grew up, poor, but I never went hungry, and I always had, clothes, and we always had a roof over our head and transportation. So I wouldn't say it was project life. We had an exterminator. We had no rats and roaches running around, but I know the refrigerator. I moved back into my house after being gone for 15 years, and the refrigerator that I had when I was a child was still in there working real good, because the only thing we normally had in there was a bottle of ketchup and 2 packs of mustard.
Where was your biological father this whole time?
Well, my biological father is actually from Iran. So
Hmm.
he came to America as a soldier in the Iranian military and met my mother at a McDonald's, excuse me. And after he met her, they became a couple. My mother was still in high school; he was 20, and then I came into the picture. But he never had that desire at that time to be married to my mother and to be a father to a child. So I didn't really meet him officially until I was 31 years old. And that's because I went and found him. But I'm thankful for him providing the DNA from a people like the people of Iran that never went through Jahiliyyah with the Arab world or the Dark Ages with Europe, but they maintain a certain level of wisdom and civilization. And I'm thankful. The Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan told me that God did something to make me special by bringing the seed of a people that hadn't fallen and marrying it with the womb of one that came from slavery. So to mix those two together, I'm thankful. And that's how I met him. And of course, since then, he's been to the mosque. He's heard me teach. He's, of course, he cried. And we had a relationship for a while, but we haven't communicated in a while. But that is how that went down with the biological father of mine.
Well, you joined the Nation of Islam at 17 in high
Yes.
school. And I watched one of your interviews. You said that leading up to that time, you were getting D's and F's, and you had only read one book. Leading up to that time, were you a relatively good kid outside of these grades, or were you getting in trouble and so forth?
Well, I just finally admitted that I probably was bad a couple months ago. But I can say this: I've been arrested in school 3 or 4 times. I've fought 3 or 4 teachers. So I guess I was bad. I'm officially going on the record saying I probably was bad. And I never was dumb. I just was not interested. And I didn't have a cause. I was a rebel without a cause. So going all the way through the years of school, I was present in school, but absent from study. And when I first met the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and I learned the student enrollment, and it asked the question, who is the original man? And the answer is the original man is the Asiatic black man, the maker, the owner, the cream of the planet Earth, God of the universe. I took it to heart and believed it. And in my mind, I said, if I am the father of all art, science, and civilization, and every people came from me, then there's nothing that someone that came from me can put in front of me that I won't be able to master. So I brought a new mindset. My paradigm in my mind shifted, and I went back to school. And my senior year in high school, I had a 4.0 GPA.
Okay. So then you join the Nation of Islam. You end up not going to college,
Right.
but you put all your effort into the nation. At what point did you actually meet Farrakhan? Was that early on or later?
I met the minister the first time when I was 19 years old. When I left high school, I got married at 19, and my wife was pregnant, but I wanted us to live in Chicago because that's the headquarters of our nation. And I felt like I could go there and get the supreme training that will make me the most effective tool, weapon, and instrument in the hand of my minister that I possibly can be. So when I went there, I was working for a security company that we had, and there was a situation where there was a brother beating a sister with some handlebars to a bicycle. And I stepped in the middle of it, got the handlebars, took them from him, and he hit me with a pole, left the building, went to another building. To make a long story short, ran over to the other building, and when I came up, I hit him and held him down. And lo and behold, while we were holding him on the ground, the same sister that we were protecting him from came out of her apartment and tried to stab me. So I grabbed her arm, took the knife. We left, went downstairs. By the time we made it down the flights of stairs, he had told everybody we jumped him. And needless to say, those that were with me that were on the security force, they didn't stay with me. They went another direction. But I was calling on Allah and moving toward them and didn't realize I was by myself. So I got jumped and put in the hospital. And during that time, I got out of the hospital, and the minister held a meeting, and we all came together, and I was on the front row, and I had a cut that went from the top of my head all the way down to here, and I had a scab that covered my whole face, closed this eye, head was swole, ribs was broke, but in 3 days I was 100% healed and looked normal. So the minister, when he seen the picture, and that was my first chance getting to meet him. And he told me, put something in my ear about what he thought about me and what he thought about the future for me. And I've been trying to do the best I can to live up to that ever since.
Well, you eventually moved back to Indiana.
Right.
And that's when you joined Mosque 74?
Right. That was my birth mosque. That's where I first came into the nation, in Indianapolis at Mosque 74. And I went back there just to offer my service to the mosque. And I ended up becoming the minister of the mosque at 20 years of age. But I was so young that some of the officials had already told everybody, don't y'all get used to him being your minister, he's too young. So I was the interim minister. But during the time of an interim term I was there interim for 6 months, we doubled in ranks. And we became the most outstanding study group in the Central Region for that year. And then the next year, the most outstanding mosque. And so the minister wrote a letter installing me as the minister at 21 years of age.
Well, what's interesting about Mosque 74, well, number one, you guys purchased the land that the mosque sits on?
Yes, sir.
And there is a child care center, a Eat to Live cafe, and a barber and a beauty salon on that facility.
That's
So it's
correct.
really like a self, enclosed facility.
It's a well, what it was. It used to be a strip mall, and we
Ah,
purchased the strip mall and gutted it, left only the three walls standing, and went in and reconfigured it and built our own school. We have our own school, and we have the space for the daycare, and we have the restaurant and the beauty and barber shop. We just converted that over, and our grand opening will be next week. We just converted that over into an event center. So we had the goal of not just having a spiritual center for the education of the adults, but we needed a place to educate our babies. We needed a place that we can come and get food that was in accord with the divine diet that our people were attracted to. And we wanted a place that you can come and get yourself together. Thus, really, the idea came out of the mind of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. He had said one time that an ideal mosque to me would be, and he named these ingredients, and we went to work to make his word bond, and we were blessed to do so.
well, you wrote a few books. One of them is Financial Coonery, Black Dollars Matter.
Well, that was a lecture.
Oh, lecture. Okay,
That
I'm
was a
sorry.
lecture
So,
I
so
did.
these are probably lectures as opposed to
Yes,
books.
those. If you're on the site, those are lectures. I do have 4 books,
Okay.
and one is Before You Say I Do. That's about mate selection. The most important decision you could ever make in your life after choosing to believe in God is to pick the right one to spend the rest of your life with. The
I
mate
agree.
you choose will either inspire you to grow into your greatness or confine you to complacency. They either be your other half or make you a half of yourself. The minister said, like, it's a good relationship will bring out the best in you and cause you to become more youthful, and a bad one will bring out the worst in you and age you prematurely. So mate selection is something we've been struggling with, as this was one of those 3 sciences that they said in 1867 on the halls of Congress that must never be taught to the slaves. So what happened, Vlad, is that as we were moving to all of these cities, being invited to speak, no matter who was inviting us, we always found that we was off in a corner at the hotel in a sidebar counseling session talking to somebody that was coordinating these events about their relationship problems. And I said, man, when marriage is done right, your home becomes a spiritual recharge center where you can break away from the wickedness of the world, let your firewall down, and come home to a place of pure love where you can plug into and extract peace and power. But whenever the organizers that are fighting for freedom, justice, and equality have to go home and get drained, and I said, man, the last thing that a man wants to come home to after fighting in this world is to have to go round 2 with his own woman. And the last thing a woman wants to come home to after fighting in this world is to find a man that ain't been fighting at all. So I figured that if we can cut down on all these, secret little meetings over there by the copying machine in the hotel, and we done made the business off of our, I said, so I got Before You Say I Do and After You Say I Do. And now we go and we still have marital problems, but I can do like those old school doctors and say, take 2 of these and call me in the morning. So that's how those 2 came about. My other 2 is Let This Mind Be in You and 7 Jewels of God.
Well, the lecture, Financial Coonery, what does that mean?
Well, it is an analysis of the kind of bad spending habits that we've adopted, in particular as Black people in America. We unfortunately, we participate because of the high stress level. We participate as a people in something that I call retail therapy. And we blame, as a people, we blame the white man for 95% of our problems, but still not spend 97% of our money with them. We are the leaders in unnecessary spending. Unnecessary spending is buying stuff you don't need with money that you don't have from people that you don't like to impress people that you don't even know. So it's a sad state that we have brought in. Last year, they're estimating in 2018 that we brought in $1.3 trillion as Black people in America. Out of 226 nations on earth, that makes us the 8th richest nation on the planet. We brought in $700 billion more than Mexico, $600 billion more than Spain. Yet Spain has 46 million people and a 208,000 square mile landmass, and they're able to provide for themselves as an independent nation. Mexico has 131,200,000 people in population and 771,500 acres of land that they're maintaining with less than half the money we have. So what this says is for all of these nations to have half in income, half in money, but double in independence. We got a lot of dollars, but we need some more sense. So we were, in that message, we were trying to show our people how to disconnect. Right now, Vlad, unfortunately, our brain as a people has been hardwired from happiness to spending. But we got to rehardwire and take it from happiness to spending and take it from happiness to saving and happiness to investing. So financial coonery is a bad habit of the misuse of dollars based upon our suffering and our stress and inappropriate use of the resources we have.
Yeah, one of my side projects is an Instagram page called Vlad Stocks, where I talk about stock investing. And because I felt the hip hop community just knows absolutely nothing about it. It's not pushed, it's not co-signed, and I wanted to be one of the first voices out there as a bigger voice to actually push investing and so forth, and which caused, it's triggered thousands of people to start investing for the first time.
Man.
And I've always said that, if you love Nike sneakers, before you buy your next pair of Nikes, why don't you buy a share of Nike stock?
Right.
Because that Nike stock will appreciate over time, and it also has a dividend, but those sneakers are going to be worthless after you wear them a few times.
That's
and I think it really changed a lot of people's perception of it.
Well, I think that is a good step in rehardwiring the brain. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad, he never really encouraged us to invest in the sense of the Dow Jones or the NASDAQ, but he encouraged us to invest in self. So what he wanted us to do is to take the money we have saved, find 6 or 8 people that have the same idea that we have, and then let's pull our mind, money, and muscle, our time, talent, and treasure together, and let's put that money and that muscle together, and let's get us a business for ourselves that when we leave the planet, we can leave something to our babies. So I think that programming that you have put out to help rehardwire the brain is a good step. And I would hope that we would go into the Nipsey Hussle persona and be one that comes back to the area that produced us. And instead of trying to put a lot of money into collaborative efforts with big corporations, start creating some small little corporations in your hood that we can actually make it a neighborhood again. I always said, Vlad, I wonder, why do we always call it the hood when the real thing is neighborhood? And you know what? The reason we call it the hood instead of the neighborhood is because the concept and function of neighbor is missing from the environment where we share space and time. So we've got to get back to that. It takes a village to raise a child. We have to get back to the principle of shop with your brother before you shop with another. We have to get back to that principle where we start calling one another brothers and sisters. Because if I'm your brother and the sister is my sister, my son is her nephew and her daughter is my niece, every problem becomes a family problem. And I think that if we did that, we would graduate out of having sympathy for one another into having empathy for one another. Sympathy means that I don't like that something happened to you bad and I feel bad that you feel bad. But empathy means when whatever happens to you, I feel it like as if it happened to me. When we get to that level, I think that we'll be able to see that thriving instead of surviving that we see in the inner city communities.
Well, one of the other lectures I believe that you did was called Empire Exposed.
Yes.
And it seemed like a reference to the TV show Empire.
And it was. It was partially. But it was a breakdown and an assessment of some of the negative imagery that was in it and the impact that it has on the psyche. Really, the whole message was done because that was what was popping at the time. It was very popular. But what we did is in the message, we waged war on the spin doctors and the architects of confusion and the social engineers that use television programs or radio programs. I said, man, why do they call it a program? Do you know the definition of a program? Is the installations of commands into a device in advance of the device being turned on. So when you turn it on, it'll automatically carry out what you programmed it to do. So most of us, unfortunately, when we watch television, we think that we're looking at reality. But we're not looking at reality. They're actually creating reality. So it's a vision. It's telling us a vision. A vision is an image of the future. It's telling us what the future, not what the present looks like, but what the future should look like. And there is a lot of madness in the atmosphere when it comes to our expression of Black artistry that is telling a bad vision or producing a bad future for us. So I wanted to go to war with it and get us to turn off the idiot box for a few hours a day and pick up a book so that we can become powerful and productive. Because leaders are not TV watchers. Leaders are readers.
Well, speaking of TV, one of the really popular shows on television this year was The Godfather of Harlem.
Yes.
Did you watch that at all?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, I did.
Okay. And the Nation of Islam was a central character in this show, including Malcolm X and the Honorable Elijah Muhammad.
Yes.
Well, number one, what did you think about the depiction of Elijah Muhammad and Malcolm X in this show?
I think that it wasn't strong. It was weak and it was watered down. But I kind of expected it whenever the disclaimer came on the first episode, where it said events have been fictionalized for dramatic effect. Last I checked, fictionalized means that lied. We're getting ready to lie about something so that it'd be a little more exciting when it comes on. So I kind of expected it to be what it was. And unfortunately, Vlad, that this docu-series is following the same personality that it always has followed in Hollywood and when it comes to depicting our great ones from the past. It's always a diligently compared, translated from former translations, King James Version of the history of the great ones that have come. So, some of the fictionalization I did not like. We did not like the depiction of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And we did not like even the depiction of the way that they had Malcolm X. We don't walk around with our hands in our pockets. That's a mark of laziness. We don't walk around with our shoulders drooped down as members of the Nation of Islam. Our code is quick thinking, fast moving, clean inside and out, right down to the modern times. So those kind of depictions. I didn't like that the series depicted and undermined the real power source of the transformation of the Nation of Islam. We have never transformed anybody from drugs by chaining them to a bed. We've always transformed people by putting knowledge in their head. So to undermine it and say we had to chain people up we got just off of teaching the knowledge of self. And the same way that student enrollment number 1 gave me a new mindset for school, that same student enrollment number 1 has given the heroin addict, the crack addict, the sex addict, whatever you're addicted to. When you learn that you are that great, you feel too dignified to reach down for a bottle or down for a needle or down for some pills. You start reaching up into your mind for intelligence. So it's a lot of remixes and watered down, and as they would say it in the streets, they stepped on. It was the story of Malcolm X was stepped on. They put some cut on it, and they went to the store and got some B12 and some isotol and some baking soda and fattened it up and re-rocked it and sold it back like this is how it was, but it really was edited and revised. Bumpy Johnson did not even meet Malcolm X until 1963.
I didn't know that.
So there's a book out written by his wife, Bumpy Johnson's wife. It's called The Harlem Godfather, Ellsworth Bumpy Johnson, written by his wife. And that story that she tells about the way he thought, functioned, and operated, interacting with the nation, what he thought of us, versus the way that it was depicted is a great contrast. So I would hope that they would make their mind up if they get a second running, another season, that they would do a little more research and at least give us some better haircuts and take them steak and shake bow ties off of us and have us looking like we're supposed to look. Come interview us to find out the true story and the code of ethics that we operate under, and give us the accurate depiction instead of doing what Hollywood has always done, which is watered it down, edited, revised it, given to the world a translation from former translations, King James version of everything and everybody that's been great in our community. So we didn't like that.
Well, ultimately, Malcolm X left the Nation of Islam, and at a later point, he was assassinated. And the men that were convicted for his assassination were NOI members. From your point of view as a high-ranking member in the NOI, what do you think of Malcolm X?
Well, first of all, if you look at the actual affidavit and the names of those that were arrested, Thomas 15X, Norman 3X, and then the other one, which is the only one that admitted to actually being the shooter, Thomas Hagen. I always wondered, I said, man, why is the only one that admitted to doing the shooting, why come he don't have an X on his name? How do the other ones get an X, but he doesn't have an X? Do you know that Thomas 15X and Norman 3X were not even at the Audubon Ballroom? Thomas Hagen testified before the grand jury that whenever he was there, he was the shooter, but he was not in the Nation of Islam. He was approached by a brother named Lee and someone else named Wilburn and another person that pulled him to the side and began having secret meetings to him to talk him in to committing the assassination. So unfortunately, Vlad, we have become lazy learners, especially as a people, which means that we have a Google brain and we don't actually dig and do research for ourselves. We're living off of IG sound bites and a tweet here and a tweet there. So people say the nation killed Malcolm. But I guarantee you, if you would use the Freedom of Information Act and began looking at the documents that shows the strategies of the counterintelligence program of J. Edgar Hoover, you'll find in there that when the math is all done, Malcolm X was not killed by the FOI. He was killed by the FBI. We didn't kill Malcolm X. They killed Malcolm X and tried to blame it on us. And I've noticed that almost every 10 or 15 years, they continue to recycle this same lie. Anytime the consciousness of a people begins to rise, they recycle this lie to disconnect the masses of the people from the perfected representative of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, the new and better Malcolm X, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. Did you know, Vlad, that they, on January 4th, 1957, they had initiated 24-hour surveillance on the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and wiretapped all of his phones? Well, if you had him under 24-hour surveillance, Malcolm was killed on February 21st, 1965. You already had him on watch for 8 years. Surely you got some record of him ordering the hit on Malcolm X. Where's the record to say that he called for that? The Honorable Elijah Muhammad told us, do not mess with Malcolm. Leave him alone. And at that time, we were 100% loyal to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, like at this time, we are 100% loyal to the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. He couldn't have said that, and we be involved in disobeying the messenger of God's instruction. So I think it needs to be, like the minister said, let's open the files. You know, who is this Gene Roberts that was the head of security for Malcolm? that talked Malcolm for the first time at the Audubon Ballroom for not having a search procedure. Do you know Malcolm X had a search procedure at every meeting he had, even 4 days before in Detroit? But all of a sudden, don't have a search procedure. And then all of Malcolm's guards were told by Gene Roberts, don't bring any weapons this day. Now, how, if they were the only people who knew that it wouldn't be a search procedure, how did the gunmen know they could get into the Audubon Ballroom with weapons, unless there was some kind of coercion going on? Why, at every lecture of Malcolm X, was the media always on the front row, but on this lecture, for the first time, they were put off to the side, and the two shooters were put on the front row? So, I mean, I don't know about you, but it just feels like a Keith Sweat moment to me. Something just ain't right.
Well, I interviewed Wesley Muhammad from the Nation of Islam,
Yes, sir.
and I spoke to him about the Malcolm X situation, and he said that Malcolm X was in grave violation of Black God protocol.
We assess Brother Malcolm's good. We assess his errors. We try to learn from his good, and we try to learn from his errors. And see, that's Black God protocol. Black God protocol is the way the gods, the black gods, interact with each other. And Brother Malcolm, at a point, was in grave violation of Black God protocol.
Can you explain what that means in your words?
Well, he probably could explain that better than I can, but of course, to say that you have pledged that my prayer, my sacrifice, my life, and my death is all for Allah God, and to bear witness that there's no God but Allah, and that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad is his messenger, and then to come out and speak ill of and vilify the messenger of God, that within and of itself is considered to be a violation of a code. So the Honorable Elijah Muhammad wrote in his monumental and illuminating book, Our Savior Has Arrived. It's on page 145. He talks about the mind of a messenger. He said, when God chooses a messenger, he takes over his mind, his heart, and his brain. So the will of that messenger becomes the will of God, and the two's will become one and the same. So if you believe that, then you know that the messenger of God is not making an error or a mistake. So for him to say that, Brother Wesley, I believe he's speaking to the fact that to give your word, to make a pledge, to say with your hand on your Quran, to pledge your life that this is God and this is God's man, and then to flip from that and go out in the public in a very foul way and go to the very enemies of not just the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, but the very enemies of Malcolm X and all of the other ones that have fought for our freedom and use their platform to be able to vilify the man that saved your life is a violation of a protocol.
Well, Farrakhan was asked about Malcolm X, and his response was, did you teach Malcolm? Did you make Malcolm? Did you clean up Malcolm? Did you put Malcolm out before the world? Was Malcolm your traitor, or was he ours? And if we dealt with him like a nation deals with traitors, what the hell business is it of yours?
That's right. So, and what the minister is saying to the world is that any independent nation that ever existed has always had something called treason that you deal with in accord with your law. So he's saying, get out of our business and out of our affairs if we did it. I always say it a little different. I said, look, we ain't no punks. If we killed him, we tell you we killed him and ask you what you're going to do about it. But the reality is we did not murder Malcolm X. It was blamed on us so that it could demagnetize at the time the affinity that we had for the Nation of Islam and the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And it's been recycled over and over the years. Why? Because right now, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan is hands down the last man standing. There is no other figure among our people that is a greater spiritual teacher that has the ability to organize, mobilize, and get things done like the minister. So they haven't been able to find, over the 65 years that the minister has been laboring, any living black or white person that they can put to contend with him. So they had to resurrect Malcolm from the grave to try to put him against the minister. But we read in the Quran that the devil plans and Allah plans, and Allah is the best of planner. So the Autobiography of Malcolm X was written with the hopes to turn people away. But the Autobiography of Malcolm X has brought thousands of people to the Nation of Islam. The telling the world that we killed Malcolm was designed to keep people from wanting to be a part of the nation. But I can tell you this, Vlad, Malcolm X has brought more people to the Nation of Islam dead than most of us that are in the nation have done alive. So it's all backfiring. And we appreciate the fact that God already told us that all things work for the good for those who love the Lord and are called according to his purpose. And we're trying to be that kind of group.
Well, I interviewed Malcolm X's daughter,
Yes.
uh,
Ilyasa.
Ilyasa, and we spoke about what her mother had said about the Nation of Islam and the death of her husband. I remember your mother had done an interview where she said that, before the actual assassination, that there were 3 different attempts on your father's life. Now, was that accurate?
If that's what she said, that was accurate.
Okay.
If that's what she said. Again, the attempts, it wasn't because of something that was going on between the nation. It was because he had gained the support of 33 heads of African states, and their agenda was to bring the issue of human rights violations to the Supreme Court at the United Nations. And so he was killed shortly after.
Now your sister, Kubila, how do you pronounce it?
Yeah.
Kubila, she was actually charged with conspiracy to kill Louis Farrakhan.
She didn't go to jail. She didn't conspire to kill Farrakhan. She went to the United Nations International School. There was another young man who went to school with her, Kirk Fitzpatrick. Kirk Fitzpatrick appeared out of nowhere. They were friends when they were in school, and he discussed it, and it was supposed to be a joke. And I think he must have been filming it, or he was recording what he was saying to my sister. And there you had that, all of that happened. It was really unfortunate because my sister, Kabila, her name means Mother Nature. She wouldn't kill a flea. She was the one who had the turtles, all the little insects and cocoons, that would become butterflies when we were children. She would have all these, all these things of nature in her room.
We also spoke about how her sister at one point was indicted for trying to assassinate Minister Farrakhan, which she said was really overblown, and ultimately the charges were dropped. But because of those charges against her sister, from what I understand, the Nation of Islam and Farrakhan actually took that opportunity to bring together Malcolm X's family.
That's right.
And Farrakhan, and they had a big meeting or a presentation where the two of them actually stood together.
That's right, at the Apollo.
And it actually promoted healing between those two sides, which I think was very, very much needed.
Yeah, it sounds like you're saying all things work for the good. I don't know if that's what you said, but so that is what happened. But what it shows, see, you can always tell the amount of Jesus that is in a person by the kind of love that they extend whenever someone has done something to offend you. This was a testimony, Vlad, of the amount of Christ consciousness and the high percentage of Jesus that's in the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. Here's a man that someone allegedly is getting ready to attempt to assassinate him, And he doesn't run and hide nor fight back. He comes and embraces and financially supports and creates a platform for healing. What manner of man is this? So this is something that we refused under the guidance of the minister to allow to be used as a weapon to create a deeper divide between the Shabazz family and the Nation of Islam, or the Shabazz family and the Farrakhan family. And I think it did a good service because she was exonerated. Charges were abandoned. She's a free person now. And as Ilyasa has said in the interview with you and has stayed consistent with it, she said the nation, not the ones that had anything to do with trying to kill my father. The nation wasn't in Mecca following him, the CIA was. The nation couldn't have made a call to the France government and told the France government to not let Malcolm X get off the plane because they didn't want him killed on French soil. The Nation of Islam couldn't have went in and put a fire bomb or a Molotov cocktail inside the bedrooms of his children after a fire. Somebody else was responsible for that. And she believed, as many of those that have done the probing for themselves and research for themselves and abandoned being a lazy learner and went and dug it up for themselves, she found in her deep research that more than likely my father was assassinated because he had the support of 33 African nations, and they were prepared to go before the UN and the Supreme Court to charge America and England with crimes against humanity for the kidnapping and the murder of hundreds of millions of Africans over the years. So it's something, Vlad. Did you know that Malcolm X and Martin Luther King both were killed at the age of 39?
Mm.
Do you know that a male matures at the age of 40? Why did they make sure that Malcolm was gone before he got to 40 and that Dr. King, why are they gone before 40? It's because if they were given this much trouble to the wickedness of this world and they hadn't even matured yet, what kind of soldiers would they have been had they been allowed to continue to live their life? Malcolm X, in the latter part of his life, had made a decision and asked, could he come back to the nation? He was working his way back. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad told him, he said, yes, but please, you have to go out and put out some of the fires that you have started. And who knows, on February 21st, 1965 at the Audubon Ballroom, maybe he was getting ready to put out some fires, but before he could put out the fire, somebody opened fire on him. Not the FOI, the FBI killed Malcolm X.
Well, I'm sure I'm not the first person to tell you this, but you look a lot like a young Farrakhan.
Man, praise be to Allah. He's a handsome man. I'm taking that one. I'm taking that. But I always appreciate the compliment of the physical appearance, but I more appreciate whenever people say that I remind them of a young Farrakhan, because that is the man that taught me everything that I know and is the example of the man that I hope to one day become. This man, Vlad, not just for me, but for hundreds of thousands of us, has fathered us through YouTube and through MP3s and through DVDs and some even VHS, some even through albums. Some can even say he fathered them through 8-track. But Farrakhan has been a spiritual father. And I remember my mother meeting the minister, and she told him, thank you for being such a good father to my son. He said, I watched my son listen to you diligently. And she said, I don't think that I could have had a man in my house that could have been a better father to my son than you were through the lectures. So I take the compliment as thank you good for the physical, but I'm striving to be a good spiritual lookalike of this beautiful man.
Well, Farrakhan is 86 years old. And at some point, he will have to step down from his leadership position at the Nation of Islam. Is there a planned succession for his leadership at this point, or not really?
Well, the minister said it like this: lions don't retire. They keep on roaring till they leave. So, the beauty of this time period that we are in, as the minister has expressed, that it is getting toward a time for his rendezvous with destiny, where he will be going away from us. He's telling us, don't worry about it. See, Jesus at the Last Supper, right before he left, he set all of the disciples down, and he had one loaf of bread in his hand, and he gave each one of them a piece of bread. And he said, "This is my body." And then he gave them the drink and said, "This is my blood." And what that represented is that I am me as an individual, but I'm going to give you a little piece of me, the bread. And if you all come back together and collect your consciousness together, then you can form together and take what you got from me, bring it all back together, and I will still be here through all of you. So our job, Vlad, in the nation, those that are soldiers, those that are helpers, our job is to bring our piece of bread together with our brother and sister's piece of bread, that we can have the loaf and be able to keep the minister's way and his word alive and well until he returns.
Well, Nuri Muhammad, I appreciate you sharing your thoughts.
Thank you, sir.
I think you have a very important message. I support what the Nation of Islam has done over
Thank
the
you, sir.
years. My friend Maisan,
Yes.
who's not in the nation, but is a supporter of the nation, he's the one that made the phone call to me and said, "Hey, I have someone that I think you should speak to." And since I respect his opinion and our friendship, this is why we're having this interview right now. You guys have definitely turned the lives around of a lot of people. I've used the FOI for security myself, and I've had great experiences in the process. And it just kind of shows how you could solve problems, and you can communicate without violence, without loud speaking, without intimidation, just with respect.
Go ahead and testify, Vlad. Testify now.
I'm testifying. So I definitely support what the Nation of Islam stands for and has been doing. And, I'm looking forward to what the NOI has in the future.
Thank you, sir. And we appreciate you for honoring the great warrior. My son is one of the greatest soldiers that we have produced as a people, an uncompromising man with a great skill and talent, that had he sold his soul, he could be at the top of the hip-hop game. But as he wears on his hat, "Sold not for sale," he lives that. And we are so proud to call him our brother. Thank you, sir, for blessing us with the opportunity to share space and time with you. And I hope we can come back and do this one more time.
Absolutely. Peace.
Peace.